What is the scariest game? The simple answer is that it's subjective, and you can never say for sure what the scariest game ever is. It's going to be something different to everyone that you ask. Even if you break things down and try and work it out mathematically, it's still flawed. Take the website Where's the Jump? It's a database where the creators take a film, know every jump scare, rate them, count them, and then they create a score, so that by the figures you can point towards the film with the highest jump scare count and the most extreme jump scares, which is then, technically, the scariest film. But even after going to these lengths, you'll always find someone who isn't affected. I can say this from experience, since after watching The Haunting in Connecticut 2, which has 32 jump scares, the highest the website counted, I found that absolutely none of them really got to me, and some even made me laugh. This isn't bragging, it's just a fact. No piece of media will ever, hands down, be 100% effective to everyone. If they made the entirety of System Shock 2 just the spiders, then for me at least that would be the scariest game ever, and probably the worst game ever. I do not like those bugs. But if not everyone, what would most people say is the scariest game ever? Silent Hill 2 is regarded as one of the best horror games ever by critics and fans alike. But best does not always equate to scariest. It has some frightening moments, but it's more about the feel of the game, the sadness and the loneliness, the sense that you're doing something wrong just by playing the game. Its story and characters are deeply affecting to the player's psyche, and the strange events and environments in conjunction with the music give off an unsettling and uneasy vibe. It's a slow burn type of horror that, whilst very good at getting under your skin, really limits its area of effect to the atmosphere, sound design, and story for a lot of the game. Is the atmosphere frightening? Almost, sometimes, but it's more of an unnerving experience than a frightening one. So, is it the scariest game ever? Probably not. Maybe a question of what even classes as scary is a problem in itself too. Some games are only scary in concept, like Discover My Body. The game is about assisting a patient through a procedure they are interested in and permanently links them to a fungus that will alleviate them of all their loneliness. Since they'll live as a hive mind sort of deal with this fungus they're co-joined to. The game feels wrong in every sense of the word. It's so alien and violating, but the patient is so eager to get it done with the way that they speak to you the entire time through this horrifying procedure. It's easily the most unpleasant game I can think of with such a short runtime. But to say that it's frightening will probably get a lot of people confused, since it's really only a scary game in the way that imagining yourself in the person's shoes is frightening. It's not jumping out to make you scared, it's making you feel uncomfortable. Just like Silent Hill 2. What about the games that are more proactive, trying to frighten you directly rather than affect you slowly? Sticking in the same ballpark, Silent Hill 1 is probably a better argument that appeals more with its eerie, dated graphics, its unseen but ever-present threat in the form of the town that keeps changing and shifting, and the monsters and creepy events that make no sense or are disturbing or strange. Silent Hill 1 emits a different kind of fear to Silent Hill 2, and the only moments of respite you get are the walks through the quiet, empty town until the radio starts buzzing. Silent Hill 1 musters up an unbelievable amount of dread as you play and really makes exploring places like the Midwich School and the hospital that much more desperate. Is it frightening? Yeah, in several places. Is it the most frightening game ever? Well, it's not a bad choice. Fatal Frame 1 and 2 are both good options also, with the ever creepy, worn-out Japanese houses and folklore tales about the horrible things people did to people in the name of strange religious beliefs that are always somewhat true within the confines of the game. The gameplay is intense, forcing you to look right at the ghosts you're trying to vanquish, and it's clunky enough to put the player at a disadvantage when trying to outmaneuver them. They travel through the walls and can defy logic to keep the combat with them stressful, especially in the first game. You aren't dealing with ghosts constantly, but the atmosphere is ever present in both games, and they often trickle in unsettling diary entries and cutscenes into both games to keep the momentum going. Never do things become overwhelming, but they never let up either. Both games could qualify, but I'd go for Fatal Frame 1, since there are some parts in 2 where the game slows down substantially. Are they scary? Mostly through a combination of atmosphere and combat. A game that gets brought up a lot is Resident Evil 7. And whilst the game presents things that are for sure bound to freak out and frighten the player, like chainsaw-wielding enemies, unkillable murderers, and psychopathic bug women, even a full-on house of traps, but despite this, the game is not frightening throughout, with the boat section being a little slow, and also thanks to the random nature of the roaming antagonists, you stand a decent chance of being left alone for quite a while. But, to its credit, you also stand an equal chance of being hounded constantly. Your mileage may vary. As usual, the difficulties factor into it. Regardless, Resident Evil 7 hits some very high highs, with some really fantastic encounters and chase sequences that occur naturally throughout the house, with Jack Baker surprising you as he appears throughout the game.
It's over, boy!
Even more localized parts like the grotesque boss fight with Marguerite can gross out a player easily, and the highest high for me was a supernaturally charged venture into Evelyn's bedroom. The game covers a lot of bases with its multiple antagonists that cater to many different types of fears, so something is probably going to get to you eventually. But if you aren't afraid of murderers, spooky ghost environments, and disgusting insectoid women, then again, the game will do nothing for you. The game can only scare you as much as you are affected by the things it tries to use, so let's go broader. Extremely high tension and jump scares are often a way to ensure that the player is on edge, and my personal choice for Scariest game is Cry of Fear. You play as Simon as he explores a nightmare town full of aggressive and harrowing monsters, disturbing nightmare sequences, and supply management that is as brutal as it is fatal if done wrong. Cry of Fear throws challenging and terrifying situations at you time and time again, with the horrifying monsters breaking through walls, jumping at you and ambushing you, screaming or moving unsettlingly. The game pulls the rug out time and time again, dumping you in near pitch-black sewer water with various monsters jumping out of the murky depths below, whilst you're struggling to hold your phone light and your handgun at the same time. Stress is an obvious factor, and all the time that you're stressed, the atmosphere never calms down. But with high difficulty comes high frustration. And the fastest way to lose a player is by getting them mad at the game they're playing. It can happen to any game, really, but when the game pushes you too far, it shatters its own illusion, and instead of a terrifying experience, it's just a game again. Cry of Fear crosses the line a few times in my opinion. Difficult games always run the risk, but still yet another great contender. Let's keep looking. The sensation of being hunted works really well in any game. It's why Jack Baker is such a great antagonist in Resident Evil 7. But he's only around for some of the game. What if the whole game was you being hunted? Presenting Amnesia the Bunker and Alien Isolation side by side as two games that stand out the most when I think of being hunted. Amnesia's monsters and Alien Xenomorph work to the same goal, which is usually to kill or at least inconvenience you as you try to accomplish goals. The two are both quite smart and use the environment to their advantage and to your disadvantage. They're also quick to punish you for your mistakes. The games are both based around stealth, so the tension is dragged out as you creep around, but any noises you make in the game are heard by them, and the overwhelming oppression you feel when in their presence is down to their ability to end your attempt quickly. In many ways, they are part of the atmosphere as well as the main thing to scare you during the game. Amnesia is probably more frightening, but Alien Isolation drags out your torment longer, raising the stress levels extremely high. It doesn't really get much broader than this, while still being focused enough to keep it trained on a specific tactic that works. There are some brilliant games in cosmic horror and psychological horror categories that will almost certainly either terrify or nullify themselves based on catering to the wrong audience. From The Darkness, PT, and Soma all present psychological horror and a fear of the unknown in different shapes and forms. Lisa's terrifying presence and the unnatural looping corridor of PT is enough to drive you mad on your own. Soma's deep, reflective story pushes the magnifying glass over yourself, and its thematics are terrifying conceptually the same way Discover My Body is. And in From the Darkness, it reaches an extremely dizzying high just by being unpredictable and bewildering, but also ominous and unsettling in every facet of its design. But ultimately, there is no scariest game, there never will be. It's far too subjective to ever say so for sure, but we tried. Everyone has their own favourite scary game, but there's something I brought up a lot during this video that we'll look at in the future, and that's atmosphere. What game has the best atmosphere? What game pushes players to their limit just by its vibe alone? Will we even find an answer? Check back next time, though next time I'll be looking at horror game graphics. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support me on Patreon, well, that would be great. Thanks.